tonight we will be exploring all about finding your most suited psychedelic guide for you in your process. But before we delve into that, we're going to have a short chat to understand more of their journeys and how they've arrived here. And to begin, we're going to be guided in an arrival practice.
Yes, I'd love to invite you all on an arrival practice. As I begin, I want to name that we are gathered on the traditional and unceded land of the Chumash people, the original stewards of what we now call Santa Barbara. We honor their enduring presence, wisdom, and resistance. Let this acknowledgement ground us in the complexity of our relationship to land and place, what has been taken, what persists, and we are invited to remember. May this practice help us arrive not only in our bodies, but into a deeper sense of context and connection. All right, so I invite you to take a minute to settle. Maybe you have to wiggle in your chair, reposition. It's going to be about 2.5 to 3 minutes, so I want you to be comfy. And when you find a position that feels supportive, I welcome you to close your eyes. If that does not feel comfortable, you can fix your gaze ahead of you or on the floor, but it might be nice to close your eyes. There we go. Beautiful, everyone. Now I invite you to draw your attention inward, allowing your awareness to gently transition from the movement and the noise of the day into this quieter moment. And now I invite you to bring your attention to your breath, not to control it, not to alter it, but simply meet it just as it is. And as you breathe, I invite you to imagine Mother Nature in her vastness, trees rooted in soil, leaves taking in sunlight, grasses swaying in the wind, seaweed drifting in the marvelous ocean so close by. Feel into the presence of this breathing green world alive around us, older than words, always moving, always here. On your next inhale, picture what you are receiving. This breath, this oxygen. This is a gift offered by the trees, the plants, the grasses. With every inhale, you are being nourished by the living world. You are being supported, sustained, and cared for. And as you exhale, sense yourself giving back. You are offering something in return, an unseen gift to those plants and those trees, and they receive it with grace. This is not just breath. This is relationship. This is reciprocity. You are not breathing alone. You are in co-creation with earth, with nature, with life itself. And in this exchange, we remember we are always being created and we are always creating. Let's take a moment to let ourselves rest in that truth. You are being held and you are holding. You are nature breathing and you are being breathed. I invite you to take a moment to feel that support, the way the earth meets you without effort. You don't have to do anything extra to belong here. Your body knows how to be held by the earth. Let your feet, your legs, your sits bones rest into your chair and feel the support. In this next moment, I invite you to just do a quick little scan of your body. Is there any tension left? Can you send breath there? Is there anywhere you're gripping? Maybe in a calf and a hip somewhere. Can you soften that just a little? We're not fixing or forcing anything. We're just noticing maybe where we're holding instead of surrendering to being supported. On your own, I invite you to take a couple breaths here. Letting the ground hold you. Letting the ground hold what you no longer need to carry. And when you feel ready, you can slowly wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes, rock or wiggle your hips. Take one last beautiful breath in. And sigh it out. Maybe, can I hear a sigh? Maybe. Oh, beautiful, everybody. And in the next minute, gently open your eyes if they were closed. And we'll return to the space we're carrying now, whatever we connected to in that practice. Welcome, everyone.
That was so sweet. Thank you.
Of course.
Yeah. Well, I would love to hear from both of you a collaborative storytelling of your origins.
Great.
As a couple?
As a
friends.
Yeah.
We started as friends, and then as events change and mutate, I switched careers, and Denise was very supportive of that. And then as I was in MSW school, we really just started vibing over theories, and especially
vibing over theories.
We vibe over theories. Yeah, that is one of our main pastimes. Yeah. And I think it just really started blooming there. So we had such a beautiful friendship, but then the professional aspect started to just grow so nicely out of that relationship. Denise, what do you have to offer?
Yeah, I think our friendship started singing show tunes. That's yeah.
And a varied friendship, yeah.
And, you know, when you can meet somebody who like knows all the words to the trolley song, it's like, okay, I'm keeping this one around. And we've also both been through quite a few challenges over the last few years and supported each other through that. And I would trust Jessalyn with my life, and I can't imagine a life without her. And so what better person to start a business with?
Yeah, a second, but yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. I want to hear more about the business and this development and what's active for you both now.
Okay. Well, that was a little brainstorm that we came to a few months ago.
Yeah.
Really. And just, you know, being steeped in the psychedelic world and working for others and, you know, learning from that and also learning what was rich about it, but also which was perhaps harmful in some of these spaces where we were working, and just creating our own vision of best practices. And it just grew organically.
Yeah.
As the good stuff does.
Yeah, so we're going to be offering what we're calling enrichment, which are basically courses, but for seekers and for facilitators or clinicians. And then we will be offering harm reduction consulting services, service to the people of the psychedelic community. So we're not exactly sure what that's going to look like, but it'll probably look like integration circles and peer support groups and things like that. And then as we get further along as a country and a world, we will be offering retreats for just trying to figure out the legal terrain of that, which is, you know, ever changing and always delightful to navigate. So,
yeah. I think there's a part of both of you that appreciates the dynamism.
yes.
Yeah. And
complexity.
I know this because you both describe yourself as trauma informed, and I would love to hear, like, not only what is attractive to you about owning that, that you are trauma informed, but also what that means to you if you have a personal interpretation.
I think it's the foundation of both of our work is, I mean, that's the first thing out of the gate. How do you create a container for people, no matter what the size of the container, where people feel that they have consent every second, that they have context every second and that there's connection every second. Because if you have had your agency taken away from you through a traumatic experience, or through a series of traumatic experiences, those 3 C's are necessary. And I don't think you can actually have rapport without really understanding where people are coming from, especially if we've all had trauma, right? So, I mean, it's not, I think there used to be this idea that, oh, those people have trauma, these people don't. No, we've all made to varying degrees, for sure. It's a spectrum, but, you're going to hit someone's trigger point at some point, and you've got to know what to do when that gets triggered.
Mm-hmm. Well said. When I was in social work school, I honestly don't know if we had even a class on trauma. And then my first job was at a mental health agency. And every week I was getting people through who were survivors of childhood sexual abuse. And I thought, wow, I didn't even learn this in school. That's really a dereliction of duty. So I just started studying and taking courses and reading books on childhood sexual abuse. And I started, I created some groups for my clients. And I loved working with these clients. And I just got more and more training. And then when I moved into psychedelics, I saw the need for really, really strong trauma training for everybody in that arena. And I think that's one of our main goals with the business, is to make sure that all facilitators and even the ancillary support system in a retreat or in an educational system, they are trauma informed and trained.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree on a personal note. And I think it's really powerful that you two both embody that, but are desiring to create more education and community and resources for more folks. And I want to hear about where somatics then came into this work and how somatic work is such a beautiful complement to this trauma-informed context.
Sure. Well, the body remembers, right? As Babette Rothschild told us, our bodies are the holders of great wisdom and of great suffering. And I think if you don't know that and you're not versed in that, especially in the psychedelic space, especially when someone is in an altered state of consciousness and they're like, oh, I'm not getting the insights that I thought I was, but man, am I shaky, or my stomach feels really weird, or what is going on? I'm so uncomfortable, right? That happens a lot. And I think people who are seeking these experiences are really, we sell it in culture as, oh, you're going to meet God, you're going to have all these amazing insights, but sometimes it's just that you're going to barf a lot and you're going to shake and your stomach's going to feel bad and you're going to be like, why am I so uncomfortable? And you've got to be able to support those people. I mean, I love the insights, but I also am like, yeah, no, we're not actually allergic to the mushroom. Like sometimes we're going to vomit, and this is a release and this is really important. How can I support you through this moment? This is okay. Nothing is going wrong. And I think that's an integral part as well, like understanding how the body is going to process things, how it holds things, and how it is a storyteller of its own and a great, sometimes secret keeper, emotion keeper, a time keeper. It's the keeper of a lot of things.
Yeah. So what I'm receiving from that is the somatic awareness is also a shift in how one might relate to their sensation or to the discomfort that they feel in their body. And having that somatic tracking practice, whether that's facilitated or something they've been cultivating before their medicine ceremony, is essential for how they may process what's moving through the body.
Beautiful. Yes. It's information.
And yeah, I'd like to ask you first, Jessalyn, and then hop over to you, Denise. But was there a pivotal moment for you in your own journey of becoming where somatics came into play?
Yes. I had a very interesting PT, like a physical therapist, and she worked on my stomach one day, and she was like, okay, well, it might be a little sore, and I was like
okay. Manual massage
on my stomach. Yeah. And I was like, okay, right, all right. And that night, I'm sorry if this is graphic, but like that night I threw up so much, and my brain was telling me this is repressed trauma. And I was like, what? Where's that? Where? And it was just this deep knowing. And it was that knowing that I have under medicine sometimes, where my body is sort of narrating to me what's going on. And I was like, wow, that massage really did something, and that wasn't the only time, but that really sticks out in my mind as this moment of, because you carry a lot of tension. And I mean, my stomach has always been something that has told me about my past. And it was just like, it was this light bulb. And I was already on a somatic journey, but that was where I was like, oh, there is so much here. And I could study this for the rest of my life.
Wow. That's really powerful. Thanks for sharing that personal story. Yeah.
Well, for me, I was a dancer, so I always was fairly embodied. But when I had my first psychedelic trip, because I thought, oh, I'm just going to lie on this mat and hallucinate. But it was like, in the body. And then when I started working with guests in the retreat world, so many of us are cut off at the neck, and in our culture, we really value the intellect, and we're often very cut off from our bodies. And if we experience trauma, we check out, because sometimes it's not so fun to be here. So working with people in a way that you could explain that and educate them that this is not going to be an intellectual experience. It is going to be a somatic experience very often. And then training them, preparing them to have distress tolerance and somatic awareness, so they're not thrown into shock and further dissociation when the psychedelic hits. And then working skillfully with the body through different energy work and active imagination to help people move areas of stuckness in the body. And it's been, I don't see how you could do this work without bringing in the heart and the body. We're not just mind. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And how do you describe the relevance of having a heart connection when experiencing so much physical discomfort?
For the client or for us?
Both.
Okay.
I was asking client initially, but would love to hear your response to both.
You do the client, I'll do.
So can you repeat the question, hon?
Yeah, like the relationship between having a connection to the heart and the experience of your somatic experience when it is uncomfortable.
I think sometimes, even if a client is having this difficult experience, how would we bring the heart in? Or, okay. Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes when someone is really dysregulated and they go, oh, I did not sign up for this. And you're like, okay, no, I understand. You are having a hard time, right? And sometimes you can remind them of that wiser self who brought them here to journey through this. And this is the word, this is them showing up for that part. So you can bring in that hard element of, yeah, this might not be what you signed up for. And I get that. And we validate that. And you say, yeah, I get that this is hard. And also, can we hold at the same time that person that came to me and said, hey, I'm feeling really stuck in my life. I really want change. I really want movement. And sometimes this is the river of sticks that we have to pass through to find that movement. So it can be a balancing act, but I think rooting into that wise part of us that knows on some level that even though the pain or the discomfort is huge, that there is something on the other side, that they've made a contract with themselves to see this through. And then you support them in every possible way you can, because then you bring your heart, you bring your empathy, you bring your compassion. You say, hey, we can do this together. Should we breathe? And then you bring in all your skills as a facilitator. But I think that's what I would do.
Yeah, it's almost like a spiritual silver lining.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I think staying centered in the heart and grounded when someone is going through a really difficult time comes with experience, because when people are going through like traumatic reenactment, an age regression, or they're purging a lot, it's really hard to stay grounded. Your heart goes out for them, but that's where our own emotional regulation comes in. And I think just cultivating that attitude as a facilitator, everything is unfolding exactly as it should be. Oh, you're shaking for 5 hours. Beautiful. That's what the mushroom or whatever medicine wanted. Oh, you're purging. Fantastic. Because I can't impose what I think the trip should be for an individual. I just have to trust the wisdom. I mean, and I primarily work with psilocybin. So it's just like, I trust it. And I'm so deep in gratitude for what the medicine brings miraculously. It's easy for me to stay heart-centered. And I think in integration after the ceremony, that's where our skill can come in to help people connect the experience with meaning making and tapping into their self-compassion. Because sometimes when people go through those really, really rough sessions, they come out of it with a great deal of pride. Like, if I got through that, everything else is going to be chump change. Yeah. And it's often the first time people experience self-compassion. They get that first glimpse of that. So I think it's on us to skillfully weave in the heart, the body, and the brain and the meaning making.
Totally. Yeah. And that integration piece is huge. That's where a lot of the meaning making around that distress and also around the capacity that was shown can come up. And then oftentimes I'll have people say, that was the hardest thing I've ever done and the most amazing thing I've ever done. Mm-hmm. Can we do this again in 3 months or 4 months? I mean, so I think people are afraid of difficult trips because they, I don't know, did mushrooms in a parking lot when they were 16 and it was terrible. But I think difficult experiences can within the right container, within the right context, show us actually how capacious we really are.
Mm. Yeah, totally. That's definitely a theme I see speaking to people in the psychedelic space, is how the capacity expands for holding paradox or holding opposites. So allowing the extremity of the discomfort or pain, but then having whatever sense of pride or expanded sense of self just on the other side of that experience. Yeah. And I know you've been using the word container a lot. And I understand what you mean, and I imagine it will be a part of your presentation. But I felt like taking a moment to just offer definition to that.
Yeah. How about it? Amazing. Oh my gosh. And also we just were given word that we're actually publishing on the container and how to build the framework for a container in the new Psychedelics academic journal. So we've been talking about it all week. We've been geeking out over theories. When we talk about a container, think about a container, right? It's something that contains what's going on. It's sort of based on the idea of the therapeutic frame, which holds the framework for therapy. But it's you, it's the guide or the facilitator. It's the dynamic that is created between the guide and the facilitator, that third thing. So that can be called rapport, that can be called a relational field, but really it's your vibes. What's going on? What is being made of that relationship? Am I projecting that you're, like, let's say someone projects on me that I'm their mean mom. That's part of the container, right? So all of the stuff that comes up between the guide and the therapist. It also could be, oh, I really like this person and feel really safe, and I'm going to be able to journey to the ends of the earth with this person. That's also part of the container. Also the set and setting, where you are, how you feel, who you are, what your personality is, what you know about the experience. I mean, it's for such a small word, it's actually encompasses a lot. And now I understand why we always just refer to it as the container. But it really is, it is the structure in which everything is able to happen. And that container can be really tight, and it can be boundaried, and it can be safe, and it can be filled with consent and safety and ethics, and a facilitator who understands power and control dynamics, understands hierarchy, understands that every moment of the journey, that person is in control of their own body, and I am just here to support them. Or it could be a really leaky container, and you have someone who doesn't have great ethics. You have someone who really gets off on being in a dynamic where they have more control, right? So container is a neutral word. It doesn't mean it's going well, but you can build a safe container built on consent and an understanding of power dynamics and non-hierarchical thinking and reciprocity. Yeah.
I think you touched on something important that'll sort of be my final question before we transition to the presentation. But when you're sharing about the container could also lack containment even in itself. So I'd love to hear more about what you've been tracking and witnessing in the field as things that have inspired something like this presentation or the project you're working on currently.
So I've seen overt harm from the most egregious harm, which is sexual abuse, and along the continuum of neglect, just sloppy care. And I think what that is about is facilitators or plastic shamans or new medicine women who just came out of a weekend program, thinking, oh, I can do this. The mushroom, or grandmother ayahuasca said that I should lead others. Do you know how long shamans train? I mean, how heart surgeons train. This is such a responsibility and a privilege to hold the container, to steward someone through one of these journeys, even if all you're doing is sitting there and maybe walking them to the bathroom or handing them tissue. That's a privilege to see this transformation. So I think cleaning up on this end where people are not being serious enough about their training, about their skill set, about not staying within their scope of practice, right? Like when I started out, well, I was very fortunate because I was working in a retreat and there were different levels. And I worked my way up to retreat leader. But even when I was beginning in hypnosis, I knew, this is some dicey, this is some dicey stuff here. I'm not prepared yet. So I had a self-assessment of where I really could be helpful and knowing that, no, I'm not ready to help you. And I see a lot of inflated assessment in new facilitators about their skills, and that worries me. Yeah. So that's one of the reasons we're trying so hard to educate, and to educate people so you can ask the right questions of a facilitator and not have this scarcity mentality, like, oh, well, this is the only person and he's only in town for the weekend, so I better do it, because you put yourself at risk.
Totally. Is there anything you'd like to add to that?
I thought that was beautiful. I think as facilitators, you really have to practice self-awareness and rigorous self-reflection, and always ask yourself, why are you intervening or why are you not? Right? And that balance is really important. And I think it comes with experience, it comes with intuition, it comes with training, and it's it's really important to always to always be not in your head, but to always be watching yourself in some way, saying, why am I talking? Why am I doing this? Am I going over to help them because I can't handle that they're crying? Or is it that they've been really trying to self-soothe? They've done it 3 times. I know their trauma history. Their mother didn't actually self-soothe them when they were kids. So I'm actually going to offer a hand because that might be exactly what they need. And so it's about like really knowing who you're working with, knowing what you're working with, i.e. who you are, what your automatic behaviors are, and then how to then transfer those into the container.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing your wisdom so far. I look forward to what comes next in your presentation. Audience, as questions come up for you, save them because there will be a Q&A at the end. And I'm going to hop into the audience for now.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks.
So today we're going to be talking about finding your guide. And it's going to be, not an exhaustive, but a nice overview of what to look for in a psychedelic facilitator.
Okay, where do you begin, especially if you are a first-time seeker? The first thing is get really clear. What do you want? Why are you coming to a psychedelic medicine at this time in your life? You can ask yourself what kind of experience you want. Do you feel like you want to go to a retreat? Do you want to be around other people, or maybe in a small group of friends to feel held by them? Or do you feel that I really want to do this alone, one-on-one with a skilled guide? Because maybe what you're going through, what you have been, what you think may come up during the journey, you just feel like it would be too much to be around other people. Where do you feel like doing it? Do you feel like doing it in your home? Do you feel like doing it in an Airbnb? Where are you going to feel safe so you can release and let go? Legality. Some people don't really worry, but some people, they don't want to bring in any risk. They want to do things by the book. So that would mean doing something in Oregon or Colorado, or going to a country where psychedelics are legal. There's a lot of underground stuff going on, And then which medicine are you called to? I mean, some people like to experiment, a little psychedelic smorgasbord, but some people really feel called to a particular medicine.
As we hopefully know, psychedelics are not a vending machine. We can't, we can't ask for a specific experience and get it, but we can get more clear on what our goals are, whether it's healing childhood wounds, right? Because that would be a very different experience than spiritual expansion, right? So getting into that idea of what do I want, the goals of our journey can really feed into that. Maybe spiritual expansion would be great for a retreat, but if you want to heal childhood wounds or get clarity on a current life situation, that might be better in an individual setting. So what your goal of sitting with the medicine is can impact what kind of experience you look for.
So where do you look? Well, District216, that's the first answer. But there's a lot of other organizations that can guide you. Psychedelic Support, Maria's List, which is part of Tricycle Day magazine, Psychedelic Passage. They vet coaches, facilitators, guides for you, and they usually will allow you to interview a few. And they're all working under the umbrella of harm reduction. Different communities, state organizations, city organization, and communities like amazing District216. Also word of mouth. I mean, you live in a very open community, but just be aware that the amazing facilitator who worked with your cousin, you might not vibe with. So what your other friends use, that might not be the right facilitator for you, because it's a relationship, right? Like everything else, you have to really gel with this person.
It comes down to trusting yourself, right? And as we talked about earlier, trauma can disconnect us from our intuition, can disconnect us from feeling safe with people. So if now this is the first green flag for a facilitator, you want them to offer a free consult. And in that free consult, that's when your gut can start asking questions. And that's when you can figure out, hey, is this the person that I want to spend time with?
Yes, and make sure that the guide will give you time. If you feel rushed, if you feel like, why are you asking me these questions? I'm a shaman. That is a red flag. So do you feel comfortable with this person? Do you really feel that I can be with this person for 8 hours behind the eye shades and really let go and feel comfortable? Do I feel safe with this person? Do I feel seen? Do I feel heard? I mean, we know that increasingly rare experience when someone really hears us, really sees us. That's kind of miraculous. And if your guide can do that, you're golden. Yeah, we talked about the container. They should be creating that container of safety even within that first consult. And do you want to spend 8 hours, 12 hours with this person?
Plus integration
And preparation. So, it's more than a first date.
And in that free consult, they should cover certain things, right? So they should talk about their experiences, their qualifications, and their training. They should tell you that they do indeed offer preparation, the ceremony, and integration. If they don't, ask, wait, sorry, you don't offer that? It's just the ceremony? That's not all these three. We will talk about this later, but all those three must be offered. And then understand what their fee is. How much are they going to charge you? What does that fee include, right? And then also, that's a great time to talk about location. Is it do they have a place where you go under the medicine? Is it on Zoom? Is it in your house? What does this whole process look like? Because it's a lot, right? You're about to undertake a pretty, what could be one of the most life-changing experiences of your life. You want to actually know the logistics, right? Because you might be like, oh, yeah, this is going to be a big thing. But you also want to make sure that this person is saying, yeah, this is what it costs. This is where it's going to be. I'm going to take care of the logistics for you. So you really feel actually taken care of in this really vulnerable state.
So these are the things that you can ask and you should ask. What's their mental health training or their degree? And it depends on what you feel about that. Do you need a therapist? Do you need somebody who's gone through a training program? Do you want someone who's studied with Indigenous people and are from a lineage? That's up to you. But they should have more than, I did it last week and I'm been told I'm a shaman, so now I can help you. And you want to ask them what their relationship is with the medicine that you want to use. For example, I work with ketamine, MDMA, and psilocybin. I would never hold space for somebody on ayahuasca. I just wouldn't feel ethical about doing that. So what is your guide's relationship with the medicine that you are going to be using? Yeah, and if they're coming from a tradition, what's their lineage? And have they had training or apprenticeships in psychedelic work? Because it's not just enough to have that book learning. You want them to be in the trenches.
Yeah, because it might look like we just sit there some of the time, but there are a lot of skills that go into this.
They may not seem apparent, but if the facilitator really knows their stuff, they really should have significant training. They should know about psychedelic history, knowing that this stuff just didn't show up on our doorsteps in 1996 with the first placebo-controlled study, that this is a long, rich history and we are beneficiaries of it. I think it's important to have people's practices grounded in research, and not just Western research, but what are practices of indigenous people, neurobiology and psychopharmacology. You want your facilitator to ask, what medicines are you on? Are you on Ozempic? That might slow things down.
Yeah.
And how might any medicines that you're on interact with the medicine that you're using? And is it even safe? Trauma training, we talked about that. You want to make sure they are deeply, deeply grounded in a solid trauma training. Human development, attachment theory, transference, and countertransference. A lot of stuff can come up during a session, and you want to make sure that people are skillful when these things come up. You want them to know about set and setting. How do they create optimal set and setting to give you the best chance at optimizing your trip? And for integration, you do want someone who knows a little bit about symbols and myth and archetypes. A lot of weird stuff can come up. And you would like someone who could ask you questions, so you might get a deeper understanding of what that purple dragon that was guarding your childhood home meant. Not that your facilitator should be interpreting anything for you, but they should be asking non-directive questions. And then again, knowledge of somatics is key.
And as I said earlier, one of the biggest green flags is, do they offer all three stages of psychedelic assisted therapy or sitting with you, right? So phase 1, preparation. Phase 2 is the thing that, what I think everyone thinks of as the main event, the thing we get excited about, the journey or the ceremony. We also want to make sure they offer integration, right? Integration might be the most important part of it, right? How does this amazing experience that I have, how does that carry into my life, and how can I create sustainable change? So as a part of their preparation, they should, and this is obviously our opinion, but they should conduct a thorough intake. Like Denise was saying, what medicines are you on? What is your trauma history? What has happened to you? Who are you, right? That's a really important thing for your facilitator to know. Do you have a history of mental illness? Does your family have a history of mental illness? What is going on, right? Because sometimes a medicine can be really, really, and it's not that they will choose what medicine you take, right? It's not a paternalistic thing, but it's like, hey, actually my recommendation is that since you have a history of schizophrenia, that maybe mushrooms are not the greatest idea for you, right? You want someone who isn't going to just be like, oh, I need a client. Yeah, let's do it, right? Because I've seen it happen. And I've seen people titrate off medicines way too quickly and then have issues for 8 to 10 months that we've had to, clean up. So a thorough intake, someone who respects what's going on inside you and respects where you're coming from. Really important. And then also someone that provides education during this preparation, right? What's going to happen under the medicine? What does the arc of the trip look like? How long is it? What could happen inside of me? What could, these things are really important to know so that when something is happening, let's say I keep talking about throwing up tonight, but let's keep going with it. I love it as a theme. So that if you are throwing up, they're not like, oh, you're not sitting there going, oh my God, am I allergic to these mushrooms? It's, oh yeah, I was told that maybe I might throw up. And then all of a sudden in that moment, you can say, hey, remember when we talked about in preparation that this could be something that happens? That's happening right now. Oh, it's really gross. I'm so sorry. Can I get you a tissue? Let me hold back your hair, right? But they were prepped for that. And then also someone who evaluates the skills that you're coming to the process with. Do you have distress tolerance skills? Do you know how to process and metabolize an emotion, right? It's not just about white knuckling it and like waiting for it to get over. Can you breathe? Can you not add those judgments? Can you process an emotion? And if you can't, hey, let's work on some skills before we go into the journey so that you feel more supported in that. And then finally, again, it is really important to know what they offer and what their fees are, right? You don't want to get to the medicine day and then all of a sudden it be $1,000 more than you thought it was, right? That is not going to offer an optimal setting where you're like, wait, I thought it was this and it ends up being this, right? So you want to make sure you know the fees and that you have probably a contract of some sort that delineates what those fees are and what they're going to offer for you. And then, of course, the ceremony, right? Is it going to be a more clinical eye shades, listening to a playlist, lying down, or are they from a shamanic tradition? It's up to you what you want, but you want to know what they offer, right? Because you want to go into it expecting one thing and getting something else. So, and again, you want to make sure that this person is versed in consent, who talks about touch. Touch can be a really important and beautiful part of being a facilitator or a guide, but it has to be boundaried. It has to be talked about before a person is under medicine. And then also they have to know that at any moment you can say, please don't touch me, right? I always say you can always down consent, but you can never up consent, right? If someone says, okay, yeah, hugs are okay, but I really don't want you to hold my hand. But then in the session, if they're all of a sudden like, no, I'll hold my hand, you actually have to respect the person who was sober, who told you that. And you can say, hey, why don't you imagine you're holding my hand? What does holding a hand mean? Can you hold your own hand, right? And you have to have someone who can tolerate the discomfort of not giving you what you're asking for if you already contracted for it. That might seem like a small thing, but that's actually a huge thing. And your body would register that later that, oh, wait, they did something that I told them I didn't want them to do, right? And that's on the facilitator, So anyway, consent, touch, all of those things are really important in the ceremony space to talk about in preparation and then follow through in ceremony. And then also an emergency plan. What happens if it goes wrong? These medicines are serious. It is not always, Denise has a funny saying. She says it's always not always lollipops and unicorns. It's not. It actually isn't. And things go wrong. And it's good to have a plan for that. Do you want to end up in the emergency room? Is that something you'd be really afraid of? Do you have a contact number that facilitator can call and have someone come over? You need to, you need to take it seriously and you need to make sure you have a backup plan. Not that something will go wrong, just in case something does. And then in integration, it should be promptly after the journey. You should not feel like you are asking for it or begging for it. It is something that is as important as everything else. It is an integral part of this. And you should feel like it is your right and your duty to be able to make meaning of your experience. And then also, will they, in a non-directive way, like Denise was saying, ask gorgeous questions to help you understand what in the world went on? Yeah, what was that dragon? Oh my gosh. Well, when I was a kid, I had a toy and that my stepdad gave me, right? Some really interesting stuff can come out of just parsing these little moments that might not feel important. You want someone who's really listening, who is really engaged, who knows your history and can just ask one tiny little question and then boom, sometimes all of this juicy stuff comes out. Not that they are directing it, not that they are interpreting it for you, but that they can help you uncover what your psyche showed you. And then also, do they have the skills to help you create sustainable change? Do they understand neuroplasticity? Do they understand that it's not an inherently positive thing. It's actually an inherently neutral thing. You have the chance to make new habits, but you also have the chance to deeper ingrain your old habits. Do they talk to you about that? That's a really important thing to talk about, right? So you want to make sure that they have the skills to help you to experience in its fullness the gifts that come after medicine, and then also to help you create space in your life to turn what could have been a really mystical or abstract or interesting experience into actual actions, right? Because that is part of the alchemy of these beautiful trips.
Okay, so lots of information. These are just some suggestions for further support after a journey. Fireside Project it's just a wealth of information. They also have a trip hotline. So if you do trip alone, you can always call them. And they have people on call. Maybe not around the clock, but
pretty much though.
Yeah. And they have loads of resources on their website. Shine Collective is a great organization if you have been harmed in a psychedelic journey. They provide peer support and referrals and a really safe place to talk about any harm that you have experienced, a nice non-judgmental space. And Zendo Project also has a wealth of information, and they also train trip sitters. That is the end of the PowerPoint.
Beautiful shots. Beautiful.
Very pretty, yeah. Thanks. So opening for questions now. And
so I'm wondering, when you have clients that are new to the experience, I would imagine that sometimes they will confront their own denials and they may not know to kind of flow with the experience. And I was wondering, how do you guys navigate that? You know, because I'm imagining someone who's new to it, they're confronting their denial, and then maybe, you know, they're kind of fighting the truth or kind of juggling with it. And then you have this choice of trying to make them flow through it, but then maybe there's the possibility that you become a part of their own fight and confrontation.
Yeah.
So what's that like for you?
You don't start out by shifting them. You honor the denial and the resistance. You honor it, relocate it in the body. I have people, and this is all contracted, but okay, show me where you feel that denial, that resistance. And they put their hand on there and they working with it energetically. And because I would know their history, and we talk about this, it's especially common on the come up, you know, like, whoa, what did I sign up for? But we honor it and we work with it gently, and then kind of miraculously people do let go because we're honoring that part that kept them safe for decades probably. And then people usually come into it. And also, I mean, if they're hitting stages in the trip where they're confronting difficult things, it's the same thing. Like, and I'll be with you. And so much of that is repair, that people are going through difficult situations, reliving experiences, and they probably had to do it all alone in childhood. But to have a facilitator there holding a hand or a hand on the back, I know this is really hard, but you're not in it alone. That can build a beautiful bridge to healing. So you work with them and you're just sensitive and you don't have an agenda.
Also, sometimes, depending upon the client's history, like I've worked with a lot of people with addictions who are in recovery or in the program. And so we know that maybe that part of them, that hypervigilance might come out. That's like, hey, I'm not supposed to be doing a drug or whatever. And so we work with that part in preparation. And then oftentimes I will, the morning of the journey, say, hey, can I talk to that part? Can we get consent from that part to partake of the medicine? Do they have any things that are coming up for them? Because sometimes you can kind of block the experience if a part of you is really resistant to it. So getting literal consent from the part that is resistant before you go into the medicine can really, really help. And then also when people are in those moments, normally I would say, wait, why are you talking? But sometimes it's really helpful to help guide that person through that moment. I just recently had someone who was like, Jess, I can't get under the tablecloth. And I was like, oh, interesting. What's going on with the tablecloth? Right. And like that ended up being like this portal to all of her shame. And I was just like, well, what if can you walk around the table? And she walked around the table, right? And we just went through imagistically what was going on. And then she was able to go under the table. And then boom, 3 hours later, I found out what happened. And it was pretty amazing. So it's about working with it, about honoring it, not trying to have anyone go faster than their body was willing to. I think we're all like, as a culture, like, yeah, let's get to it. Let's get to the release. Let's do that. Right. And we have like this cowboy mentality that like has to be rough and fast or whatever. I don't know. And it's like, no, let's go at the pace that the person is going at with consent of all of their parts. And let's just surrender, explore, go really gently. And I think gentleness is really important. Yeah.
That's really beautiful. It sounds like overall, you're just kind of wherever they're at, you're just there with them. And it's kind of metaphorically, you're kind of holding their hand to the experience.
Sometimes literally.
Yeah, literally. Yeah, literally.
With consent.
With consent.
Yeah, with consent. Yeah. Do you guys ever facilitate combinations of psychedelics like ketamine and psilocybin at the same time, or?
No. With some people, I've done the hippie flipping, starting with a little MDMA to go into the psilocybin. But I'm not skilled at it, so no, I wouldn't do it. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Just to go back to your first question, what's not helpful, and I've had a lot of clients come to me saying, well, I felt that resistance. And all the facilitators said, just relax, just surrender, which makes the client feel like, well, it's my fault.
I'm doing something wrong.
I didn't know how to relax and surrender. No, it's not your fault. It's just not helpful. I mean, it's like telling somebody when they're having a panic attack, just relax.
Calm down.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, mine wasn't really a question. I just wanted to compliment you on the depth of knowledge that you two are bringing in. I'm not in the therapy field, and I'm truly impressed. And I wanted to add that the distinction between what you offer and the trend in influencer culture, to me, is very apparent. And there's so many people that are just wanting to be influencers on the internet, and it's so easy and it's monetized. And I think what you're doing is very important, and it obviously the quality level and what you offer is way up there compared to some people I've seen. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
So you do the journey, and what I want to know is, how do you regulate the timeline of the aftercare?
Sure. I like to make sure I always check in the next day, make sure, because there's some stuff that can happen the next day. You can have a headache. There can be stuff going on. Reentry into their home could be difficult, but most of the time it's, oh, I'm doing great. Oh, this is great. Love. And so, yep.
So with cognitive therapy, things might come up a week later,
Yeah. That's what
10
I'm
days
getting.
later. So with the neuroplasticity, what I'm asking is where's that line drawn when you read the room of this individual, and does it get modified or,
Right. So after that first initial, we'll schedule something between 36 and 48 hours after the trip.
Okay.
They've already been told about the window of neuroplasticity, and we've already, at least for me, we've already kind of prepped a little bit for what we're gonna do, what our goals are, if they align with our intentions. So they kind of have a game plan before we even meet. And I ask and they normally journal before we meet. So you're already kind of working within that window before the first meeting. And then that's your first integration meeting, 36 to 48 hours after. And you go over, hey, what's going on? What showed up? Tell me what. And sometimes it's a time when the facilitator actually finds out what happened in those silent 3 hours, right? And so you start to make meaning out of it. You start to understand what they uncovered. Sometimes new intentions show up. Sometimes paradoxes show up, right? So you get to the meat of what happened in the trip for them. And then at the end of that first session, I like to then talk again about, okay, so how do we translate this into actionable things? And I go over again what the window of neuroplasticity is. We talk about it. We talk about what it really actually means. Now that they've done the medicine, sometimes it jives a little bit more. It's less abstract. And you're like, no, I feel it. It's easier to make choices. Yes, I understand what you're talking about. How can I keep using this? Right. And so you sometimes have a little more buy-in. And then I like to after a month, after the journey, have another check-in and say, hey, what's been going, because the glow is starting to come off the rose by that time. And so there's some grief that shows up. And so we oftentimes deal with, hey, these amazing things have happened, but also things aren't as sparkly. Like, food doesn't taste as good. Sex isn't as fun. Like, you're like, yeah, I know that happens. Can we grieve that? But what a gift that was, right? And then you talk about, okay, so now that it's not as easy to make these changes, now that window of neuroplasticity is closing a little bit, now that your brain isn't as plastic, what are we going to do to continue those intentions now that it's gotten a little bit harder? And that's where I think that's where some of the real work comes in, because you don't have that glow anymore. Yeah.
In the interim of that, is there a lifeline? Is there a call-in option?
I always say you can WhatsApp me if something's going on. Normally people are very happy to get back. I mean, we talk about how they'll be more sensitive. We'll talk, I go over what they can expect during that window so that they're not like, oh, why am I crying in the grocery store? We talked about that, that maybe that song that reminds you of something is just gonna, you're gonna be a lot more sensitive, right? So I like to give them a lot of information about what's gonna happen so that when things do happen, they're not like,
so it's more of a holistic approach.
Exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Great.
And I offer a pretty hefty workbook with a lot of integration prompts. And so I check in with somebody the day after. Within that first week, we'll have a session. And then generally in a couple more weeks, we'll have another. But integration, they are educated. And this will go on for days, weeks, months, years. And impatience is the enemy of integration. And yeah, a lot of us love that ceremony, right? We love that and how you feel afterwards. And I've had clients say the mushroom has left the building. It's like, yeah, because you didn't make it feel welcome, right? Because integration is where we honor these gifts that we're given, even if they're very difficult gifts. And it's like the medicine plants these seeds, but then it is our privilege and responsibility to cultivate those seeds and water those seeds. And that's daily plodding practice. And that's not the bells and whistles. But I feel that, we are on this plane, whether we like it or not. So we go beyond the veil and we get these downloads, we have these transformational experiences, but then we're here. And what are we meant to bring forth? And it's not just like what the mushroom or the medicine has done for me. I think we are tasked with bringing that to the world. Who am I in relationship? Who am I in relationship? Yes, to myself, but to my family, my friends, my community, the earth, right?
How to create a soft landing for the reintegration.
Yeah, I mean, we're always there. I mean, and that is one of the problems. I've heard people come to me like, and they have these really difficult experiences, and I'm like, you never got any follow-up with that? Cause wow, one line, one reframing can change things forever. Oh, you mean that wasn't my fault? I'm not crazy forever? I'm just astounded sometimes. And it is a dereliction of duty. Yeah. By people when they don't.
Well, it's like doing it from a Pez dispenser.
Right. Yeah.
Right. If you're winging it, you're really not in integrity with someone's health and well-being.
Yeah, because the reentry can be really hard and experiences can be really big. I mean, one of the services I offer is in integrating difficult trips that people have had in ceremonies, and some of the stories I've heard are just appalling. And they come in the yeah, of course. Yeah.
That's really good work.
I want to say thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. I'm very moved, very, just very touched from the beginning of your presentation, mentioning the indigenous people. I spent as long as I've been an adult working with the Chumash tribal members, multiple different families, and so that means so much to me to hear somebody say that. And I wonder how much that has to also be dealing with being trauma-informed, trauma-aware, open to those harder emotions and how to connect with them and move through them. I wanted to share something with you that one person shared with me, and I thought it was kind of when you said something like the neuroplasticity goes both ways. He would always say to me, he said, Eric, the door swings both ways. And when the door is open, things might leave, but things may also come in. So when I heard you say that, that resonated, and I just wanted to share that with you as a way of saying thank you, because it's like a different way of saying what you said. With you, you're also, I really appreciate, I know, right? I really appreciate you and you sharing what you shared, also so special and so touching. And I was curious, when you said the word plastic shaman, have you seen the YouTube video, the YouTube documentary made by indigenous people? And if not, I believe you would find this documentary made about 25 years ago to be very insightful and funny. And so it's called Plastic Shaman. It's on YouTube. It was shared with me with some indigenous people. And I suggest anybody who's curious, what does that mean? And how do we not be, how do we learn how to not do that? So I thanked you for all of those things. And I was taking notes. I was inspired by Jared here, because I saw him taking notes. And I said, wow, that's so amazing. My final question was, well, these other ones weren't questions. Those were compliments. But my two questions was, you're familiar with the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? And for anybody who doesn't know what that is, I don't know if you want, well, Mike, let you, do you see that kind of happening in this space?
Yes.
And could you maybe kind of explain to them that curvature?
Sure. Dunning-Kruger is it's kind of like a bell curve, and it is when you know a little bit, you think you know a lot, and when you know a lot, you realize you don't know a lot. Yeah, is that an okay way of explaining it? Americans are great at the Dunning-Kruger effect. There was this interesting study a couple years ago about kids, American kids, and how they think they did on tests versus Europeans. And the Americans come out going, "Oh, I aced that. Oh man, oh I did so well." Wow. C. I think it was British kids. They were like, "Oh no, very bad, very bad, very bad. A minus." Right. So I mean, I always say we are the country of Dunning-Kruger. And it really dovetails with hyper-individualism, right? With white supremacy. Like, I mean, it really does make sense why we are so susceptible to this cognitive bias, right? So, and so of course it shows up in places where there's a lot of spiritual bypass. So that's my take on it. And it is, like we said, sometimes it really does look like you're just sitting there. Right. So I think people are like, "Oh, I can do that." But no, you're not just sitting there. You are co-regulating with this person, right? You are making sure that you are not bringing any shit into that space, right? So you are, and also if you're sitting there for 8 hours, shit might come up inside of you, right? So you're like, "Oh, my body's uncomfortable." Nope. Okay. Right. And so you're constantly tending to your own instrument, how your instrument is creating this field. And then everything that Denise talked about, all of those skills that we bring. And then also, when do I intervene and when do I not? Right. I like to use, and taking it out of the hierarchical, dynamic, so that's my caveat. But I like to think of working with someone, sitting with someone as like when they're crying, it's almost like a newborn baby who is learning to self-soothe. That baby has to learn how to self-soothe, right? Or else for the rest of their lives, they're going to need someone else to soothe them. But when their little body starts to almost get overwhelmed by that and is starting to learn, "Oh wait, maybe no one's not going to show up," then you go in, right? But learning that line is really important, because so you watch the person, they're crying, what's going on, I know all of their history. I'm making sure I'm really regulating, so I'm not adding anything into the space. Okay, all right, it's been, you know what? I'm actually going to hold a hand. And sometimes they're like, oh, and then you see their whole body. But you don't want to go in before then, right? Because then you're teaching them, "No, I don't actually believe that you can soothe yourself." Right. So there's so much involved, and that's not something you can learn in a weekend training or learn off of a webinar on Instagram. I don't know. Right. But you might think that you can sit with medicine because you've done it 20 times and you love it, and you watch people at Burning Man do it, and we're sitting in the tent with them. You're like, "Oh, I can be a trip sitter," right? No, there's a huge difference. And it's no shame on them. Like, of course, like people, I love when people have confidence in themselves, right? But you also have to really, like, again, be really brutally honest with yourself. What if something shows up? What if someone comes to you and is like, "This really big thing happened to me. Can you hold space for that? Can you not get driven off course by really huge stuff that shows up in these spaces?" Or when they're screaming at you, I had a client who once said, "I don't like your face." And I was like, "Okay, do you want me to hide it?" And she was like, "Actually, yeah, that's better." And I was like, "Great." I was like, "All right, well, is there anything else you need?" No, that's okay. I'm like, "Great." And you just go with it. I was like, maybe my face is not okay right now. I don't know. It doesn't matter. No shade on me. I know I like my face. It's fine. But you have to be, you've got to be prepared for anything that shows up. And I think that you have to like be trained or whatever. You've got to be more than a Dunning-Kruger. Does that answer your question?
100%.
Yay. Yeah.
Last call, my friends.
Yes. Last question.
Last call.
Do you find that facilitating for other people, facilitating them kind of helps you process your own trips and your own experiences? And then also on the contrary, you ever find that sometimes other people's experiences kind of trigger your own traumas, and you kind of have that duality of, healing and also triggering yourself through this? Because it's just, I can only imagine it's got to be very visceral when you only know someone so well and they're so vulnerable.
I think that's why we were so, I guess, vocal about having mental health training, because learning how the professional use of self and not getting triggered in these situations is really important. It's not like that it doesn't come up, but you really learn how to not get triggered, right? You're like, oh yeah, this reminds me of that, but it's not like all of a sudden now you need to, deal with yourself. You've done a lot of therapy. Hopefully you've worked with the medicine. You know what's happening. You've learned how to deal with vicarious trauma. You've learned how to do self-care. Like, I have rituals and stuff that I do ahead of time to make sure that I have things that I wear. I have, I think as a facilitator, it's your job to make sure that you don't get triggered in a session. It's your job to have a professional self. It's your job to show up for that person that is trusting in you. So, things can be hit close to home, and there can be some beautiful mutual healing sometimes that happens, right? Where you do have a really similar thing and you can both be like, yeah, fuck that. I'm so sorry that happened to you. No, and you can be accessing your own emotions because you were a real human and something similar happened. But there's a difference between like meeting someone in a place and being like, oh yeah, that happened to me, and like it's coming up for me. No, like that is your job to make sure that doesn't happen. But you can use yourself and be like, yeah, isn't it? Doesn't it suck that other people hurt us and then we have to deal with healing? For sure. Yeah, what happened to you? Break it, you buy it, right? You can be impassioned, you can use yourself, but there's a difference between being triggered and then and using what your experience is to help meet that client where they are. Because what you're describing is the therapeutic of ideas of transference, which is the client transferring things onto the facilitator or the therapist, and then countertransference, the facilitator transferring things onto the client. So.
It's in my experience of traditional therapy, I've found that, there's some really healed, amazing, beautiful people. And there's also some people where I'm like, I feel like you need a therapist.
Yeah.
And my therapist needs a therapist.
Right. Right. And then you're just perpetuating this dynamic sometimes of having to do the work, and then you feel even more alone. And and then it's re-traumatizing, and oh, yay. Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it happens in all it does happen. Yeah.
I would imagine that you see that same parallel in the psychedelic space as well. It's just amplified times 10.
Right.
Yeah. Yes.
Absolutely.
And just vigilance. I mean, this work is sacred. This work is so important. It's such a responsibility. So I don't just saunter in. I mean, I prepare, and I prepared for decades to be here in many different areas, not just psychedelic use, but many, many different areas of life.
Yeah. So age of your facilitator can be a really important thing to you, right? Like, I'm 40, but I've had people who are like, oh, you seem a little young, or people who are like, oh, 40 years old. I don't know. We all have like these weird associations with age, but that can also be a part of trusting your gut. Do you want someone who is going to feel...
Who has had life experiences that perhaps you have had? Like, if you've gone through the death of a spouse, if you've gone through a serious diagnoses, do you want someone who can maybe really resonate with that? We can't have had every experience that our clients have, but we can empathize. But I like to have people who are grounded in some life experience too. Yeah. Thanks for the question.
All right. Are we in the hot seat now?
But as always, we have the Change Your Lens series, which those who have been here before know that I ask each guest a handful of questions. And my invite here is just to share the first thing that comes up and just to follow that. So my first question is, I would love to know about an impactful psychedelic experience that you've had personally and what made it so impactful.
My second trip with the mushrooms ever, I asked for help me believe that the universe is benevolent, and the mushroom brought out all the stops and made me go through this necessary, like infantile and toddler narcissism where I did feel like I was the center of the universe because I hadn't had that. But developmentally, I needed that. Yeah, that was very impactful. And that was a fun trip.
A couple years ago, I went to a practitioner only retreat in the Netherlands, and it was truly beautiful. It was a bunch of us in this barn from the 1700s, and there were candles and gorgeous floral arrangements. We were all like in a circle, and there was live music, and at one point, one of the practitioners started dancing, and all of us were. It almost felt like we were, as a community, burning off all of this, maybe the vicarious trauma and all of the stories that we held from our clients, all of the grief and the emotions that our clients hadn't metabolized. It really felt like this group bonfire. And we all, in our integration session the next day, a lot of us remarked that was our experience. We were all having this simultaneous experience, but none of us were talking to each other. But that was an incredible moment. It was an incredible trip, and it was just so cool to see this sort of hive mind or collective unconscious working in this room. It was really beautiful.
Yeah, very cool. My next question is there a psychedelic or plant medicine that you're fascinated by but haven't yet explored? And what is the draw?
I mean, I'm such a lover of the mushroom. I have this long-standing relationship. I don't know that I am really longing to have a deep relationship with another medicine. And yeah, that's just me. That's my nervous system. And I'd like to go deep with one particular medicine.
I love how you just say the mushroom. Like I see it with like capital T, capital M.
She does do that. Yeah. It's nice. I mean, I guess I love all the medicines. God. I have not sat with combo. It is something I am drawn to, but also want to make sure I do it in a really ethical way, and I haven't exactly figured out what that is. So I guess that's something that I'm drawn. I think the shamans I've worked with talk about how it's really good for body things. I have weird back pains, and again, not a vending machine, but I've had the shamans be like, that would be a really good medicine for you, and so I'm like, okay, maybe. So yeah, I don't seek medicine. I never go, this is what I let it come to me. So I trust that someday it will come to me and it will be the right time. And that will be the time that we co-create an experience. So
Totally. Yeah. Well, if you were to be able to co-create an experience with any psychedelic of your choice, with anyone, dead or alive,
oh God,
who's there and what are you sitting in ceremony with?
Oh my God. Oh, this is I needed time to prepare for this one. Okay, LSD because it's so long. And oh God. It's okay. Bell Hooks and Audre Lorde would be like so high up there, but also I wouldn't want to presume that they would want to spend 14 hours with me.
We're thinking ideal.
It's not really going to happen, so you can let your imagination go.
I think an Idella Lawson would be pretty fun too. Like, I've been reading some. I don't know. That's really hard. I would want I would want philosophers. I would want some change makers. I would want to have the opportunity to have cool conversations, but then also just totally have fun and dance and listen to music. Probably my best friend and her girlfriend. I'd want it to be a mix of people I knew and people I idolized.
I see that for you. Yeah.
The mushroom, Carl Jung.
Mic drop. Okay, yeah, that is right. That knowing her, and yeah, that is it. Wow. So concise.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Jessalyn and Denise, for blessing us here at the District House.
Thank you, Guy.